What's going on, everybody? The real Sherif M here, aka Manganas Steel, and I've gotten a lot of requests for tips on how to sharpen the GRAZIOSO. So, a little bit of a disclaimer here, I am by no means a sharpening expert at all. If you really want your GRAZIOSO to have the best possible sort of sharpening, talk to Mike Emler of Crazy Sharp or Neeves Knives, Jared. These guys know a hell of a lot more. This is just kind of my technique of how to upkeep the blade and really just give you guys a little bit of insight into my process. But it is very easily possible that I'm going to do things that are blatant mistakes, so don't take this as absolute truth or fact by any means. All right. So now with all the disclaimers out of the way, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let's get into this. I am using the Work Sharp fixed angle system. I have mine, let's see here, set to 20 degrees because that's the factory edge. And instead of going through every single stone, I'm just going to show you the last stage. I usually stop around 600 grit personally. Now, to get started and to ensure that I'm getting decent coverage or decent sharpening across the blade, knowing that I haven't missed any spots, it's not a bad idea to use a Sharpie. Just mark off that edge and ensure that you are getting full coverage across the blade. And generally what I like to do is I'll use the edge here and connect to the heel. So this part right here on the blade, and I'll just kind of line it up, rotate it over, and I'll make sure that this side is lifted off of the blade itself, okay? So that way, I'm just getting the edge, the inside edge here of the stone onto the edge of the blade. And I'll just start doing my passes. I'm not putting down any pressure whatsoever. I'm actually more focused on going this direction than going up and down. Don't put any pressure down because then you're going to fuck up the angle and all of that stuff. So just by lining up that edge of the stone with the heel of the blade, rotating over, making sure that it's not making full contact, and doing my passes. Now, as I come around here to the belly, that's when I'll start laying down the stone completely flat. Because at the belly and towards the tip, that's where it's like any other knife, you know? So there's no reason for it to be lifted up. And I make sure that I keep the stone flat and I go a little bit past the tip here. That ensures that the edge comes all the way off the edge. Now, one of the things that I've learned is very important is not to do one of these where you rotate it over the tip. That's how you screw up your tip really quickly, actually. You'll blunt a tip and it's not fun. That's also part of the reason why you don't put pressure down, because it'll make that mistake infinitely easier to do. So I'm just going back and forth, and as I come back in here, I lift it up a little bit and kind of realign with the heel and come back around. Very straightforward, not a big deal to do, and not terribly difficult to ensure that you are getting that recurve properly covered with the stone. And really don't forget to focus on the belly here, because this transition area right through here, it's very easy to kind of glance over it, but you end up doing a lot of cutting with the belly in all reality in like everyday tasks, and it's kind of easy to glance over it. So make sure that you get full coverage over that whole area. So now that I would say this side is sufficiently done, I will flip it over and head to the other side. That's looking nice and well done. And you can see there's just a little bit of black Sharpie here where I have gone over the line. I don't know if that's going to come through on the camera, but this little bit of black is actually just past the edge. So no big deal, okay? So pop this guy out, and with the work sharp, this was a recommendation by Neeves Knives. There's a guy on Etsy who 3D prints these. These help you maintain your angle throughout the entire sharpening process. So again, throw down a little bit of Sharpie here. Make sure you get good coverage over the entirety of the blade. Should be having a little bit of a burr developing there. And same thing. Put the edge of the stone on the heel and just start working it. Alright, so we did the other side, the pocket clip side, and you'll see I have flipped over the knife here. And all I'm doing now is just kind of working it back and forth a little bit on each side, just to ensure that I have a nice symmetry to the V in the edge and get as much of a healthy sort of toothy edge as I can possibly get. So I like to do a few extra passes on each side with whichever stone I'm finishing on. Again, don't know if this is advised or not. It's just something I tend to do. If you guys know better than me, by all means, correct me. I am very, very open to learning. As I said, I am not super duper knowledgeable about sharpening whatsoever. This is just, again, the technique that I use to maintain my users, like this copper Grazioso here, the Duracell Grazioso, as it's been lovingly referred to. One thing that I do tend to look for is sometimes you will see some weird sort of steps in the surface of the blade when you're doing the sharpening, and that generally for me is an indication that I haven't gone over that segment really well, right? And that's something that I will just take a moment out of the sharpening just to pull the knife, kind of like I am now, and ensure that I am doing that to the smoothest finish that I can have, or the most consistent finish that I can have throughout the entirety of the blade, you know? It just makes my OCD kind of work a little bit, or at least I feel like I can justify in my head for some way, shape, or form. But so far, yeah, that's looking really nice and consistent all the way through. Looking nice. I will pop this over one last time. Do the same. Line it up. Flatten it out again. Let's see, how's that look? That looks really nice and consistent. So I'll switch over to my ceramic stone. I don't tend to do a ton of passes with the ceramic stone because in my experience that tends to get out the toothiness a little bit too much for my liking, and I want the toothiness. I really do. I want to get that bite in the edge, so I will not do a ton of passes here. I just kind of want to deburr it a bit, and then I will transition over to a different set of finishing tools. So this is a little strop that I found a while ago from gridomatic.com. I don't know if it's still available, but what I love about it is that it's incredibly thin, which makes it very good for working on recurves. And I believe, if I remember correctly, it's made out of kangaroo leather. I usually have it preloaded with compound, and I'll just do a few passes back and forth. Again, I don't want to do too much because I want to maintain that toothiness, and that should be good. Let's give it a paper test. Oh yeah, at least to my finger, that's feeling pretty good. And let's see, let's get some. Got some paper over here from the printer. Now, one of the things that I do pay attention is not just the sliciness, but I want to see that in every point of the edge, it doesn't have any hiccups, or the paper isn't biasing like it to one side or the other too much. You can actually kind of diagnose edge issues a little bit by feeling how it pulls through the paper, believe it or not. If you develop that kind of sensitivity, it'll actually pay off in the long run. So I feel the tip could just be refined a little bit more here on the strop. So I'm just giving the tip a little bit of extra attention. Yeah, the tip feels better there for sure. And really, very nice, feeling very smooth in the cutting performance. If I do have any other concerns about, let's say, there being a burr or something like that, I always have this guy with the round edge, ceramic rod. As you can see, I've used mine quite a bit, and I will just sit here, do a few quick passes. I'm not the greatest, again, at this, and sometimes you can feel a little bit of something catching and easing off when you do your few passes there. Oop. Let's get back here. So now that's a little bit rougher. So again, I'll come back to the strop any burrs that may have picked up. Pretty straightforward, no surprises. And now back to slicing like a demon. And that's really it, guys. I mean, you know, there's nothing special to the process. That is really just how I like to approach doing some touch-up work. And this technique works if you're doing it through the entire range of stones. I mean, you can sit there and start at 220, work your way up all the way to 600, and get this result, you know? One thing I'm very curious about, and I haven't done it yet, I'm really thinking about doing it, is taking one of the Graziosos to 17 degrees behind the edge, because 17 degrees and this sort of thin of blade stock I think is a really nice combo. Makes for a very slicey blade. I just don't know if N690 will really support it like nice and stably. So that's pretty much it, guys. I will probably just run this under some water, get some of the gunk that's already on the blade and the Sharpie off of it. I will run probably some KPL in through the edges of the blade. I don't really want to take it apart too often if I don't need to. And I will call it done. Now, one last little tip. If you are like me and you get a bit of scratches here on the copper or your brass, real easy way to get rid of them is, believe it or not, the scour side of a sponge. You just kind of run it back and forth in a horizontal fashion like this and wipe it off, and you will get rid of most scratches on the brass or the copper, and it will keep looking new. The only downside that I can see so far is that it will wear the finish on your black hardware just a bit, kind of like mine. I personally don't care, but some people may. But another alternative is you can always force patina. And then you really won't care about any sort of scratches or snail trails or anything like that. So, hope you guys thought this was helpful and you enjoyed the video. Definitely don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.